Michigan workers and their unions have played a vital role in the history of our state. Ann Schaefer, former cereal worker, strongly believes in creating greater awareness of labor's heritage.
We need to get labor orientation into the classes in our schools so that children know that labor and unions are a part of this culture just as much as industry or business management or anything else is. It is the diversity, the richness of that heritage that has made us the country we are today.
Early in the 19th century, Michigan's economy thrived on our state's plentiful natural resources. Abundant waterways, tall pine forests, rich deposits of salt, coal, copper, and iron provided jobs for many and wealth for a fortunate few. Even before the Civil War, Michigan workers formed local unions to obtain wage protection and better education. Mechanics in Marshall and Ypsilanti, printers, seamstresses, and ship's carpenters in Detroit, and railroad workers in Jackson. Each had their own separate unions. In the 1880s, a new national union, the Knights of Labor, attracted many Michigan workers with a call for unity among all men and women, regardless of nationality, race, or trade. The Knights organized co-ops, led boycotts, and assisted lumber and sawmill workers seeking to shorten their long workdays. Demanding 10 hours or no sawdust, striking workers in Muskegon, Oscoda, Osabo, and the Saginaw Valley closed down the industry, elected Knights to political office, and in 1885 won a 10-hour-a-day state law.
Storm the 40 Knights of Labor, battle for your cause. Equal rights for every neighbor, down with tyrant laws.
However, even the largest of Michigan's early unions found it hard to survive frequent recessions. By the 1890s, Michigan's economy shifted toward larger-scale manufacturing, and booming industrial towns attracted farmers and immigrants seeking economic opportunity. They found jobs in Upper Peninsula copper and iron mines, Grand Rapids furniture factories, Belding textile and Kalamazoo paper mills, Battle Creek cereal factories, and Detroit metalworking and carriage shops. Men, women, and even children were drawn into this expanding workforce. Union affiliates of the newly founded Michigan and American Federations of Labor undertook to organize workers in each separate craft. Local unions emerged among longshoremen, teamsters, brass workers, and painters. With their talents in great demand, skilled craftsmen forced many firms to boost wages, maintain favorable work rules, and hire only union members. Employers responded by forming their own associations to curb union influence and to maintain non-union workplaces called open shops. In 1903, cereal industrialist C.W. Post challenged the National Association of Manufacturers convention. The manufacturers of this country must organize. They have a duty to perform toward the country at large whose people are threatened with the loss of prosperity. Some employers sought to weaken unions and craft workers' control over production. They conducted time and motion studies, redesigned jobs, and often replaced skilled craftsmen with lower-paid workers. Other employers terminated union contracts and obtained court injunctions against picketing and boycotts. Blacklists of union activists flourished. A new national union, the Industrial Workers of the World, responded to the employers' anti-union actions, advocating that all workers belong to a single union.
There is power in the band of working men when they stand hand in hand. That's a power that must rule in every land, one industrial union grand.
The IWW was active on many fronts. In Detroit, they led the first major strike of auto workers, ran a bookstore, soapboxed for an end to what they called capitalist exploitation, and confronted the right of employers to control factories and society's wealth. The Socialist Party shared some of the IWW's goals. Railway unionist Eugene Debs campaigned for president on the Socialist Party ticket throughout Michigan and the U.S.
The working classes must be aroused. They must be made to hear the trumpet call of solidarity, economic solidarity and political solidarity. One great all-embracing industrial union and one great all-embracing political party, and both revolutionary to the core.
On other fronts, affiliates of the Michigan Federation of Labor fought against child labor and open shop conditions. In 1911, 7,000 furniture workers from 60 different Grand Rapids factories walked off their jobs. With the assistance of the Brotherhood of Carpenters, they sought, and at a couple of firms won, wage increases and a 9-hour workday. But they were unable to win union representation and collective bargaining. A year later, the Kalamazoo Corset Company refused to renegotiate its labor contract and fired 11 union activists. The women, seeking wage increases, better sanitation, and an end to foremen's sexual advances, voted to strike. Leaders of the International Ladies' Garment Workers defied a court injunction against picketing and were jailed. In a newspaper ad, the company threatened to move all production to Iowa, but the union launched a Midwest consumer boycott, and with support from other unions, the strikers won some workplace improvements, but no new contract.
Take a trip with me in 1913 to Calumet, Michigan, in the copper country.
The open shop conflicts of this period erupted into violence in the Upper Peninsula. The dangers of mining alone with new one-man drills, nicknamed widowmakers, and complaints about life in copper towns controlled by the mining companies fueled a bitter 9-month strike led by the Western Federation of Miners. Calumet and Hecla and other copper companies responded by hiring professional gunmen and local deputies. The entire Michigan National Guard was dispatched to the area. Guard Commander Roy Vandercook wrote to Governor Ferris, "I am aware that every mine locality is a little kingdom. I know this is not American, but they are not dealing with American citizens. I am satisfied a large proportion of the present population has to be ruled and provided for as the mine operators rule and provide for them." The strike dragged on as the owners refused to negotiate with the union, and the strikers began to lose local support. A crushing blow to the miners' morale came at a Christmas Eve party for the strikers' children, when someone falsely yelled, "Fire!" and a stampede to the exit resulted in the deaths of 62 children and 11 adults.
The piano played a slow funeral tune, and the town is lit up by a cold Christmas moon.
4 months later, the strikers agreed to the company's terms. Somewhat shorter hours and higher wages, but they had to tear up their union cards. Jack Foster, a Calumet resident, recalls that work for miners did not last for long.
Why, the copper market went down to nothing, so all the mines closed here. And then all the men went to Detroit, Flint, Pontiac, and those places because Ford was paying $5 a day.
The new auto industry thrived in the open shop industrial cities of southeast Michigan. Upper Peninsula miners, farmers and sharecroppers from the Midwest and South, new waves of immigrants from Europe and the Near East crowded the cities and worked the factories of Ford, Buick, and Olds. However, there were not jobs for everyone. Union activist Beverly Ford recalls her father's discovery after arriving in Michigan from Alabama.
They stood there for hours and hours, and the foreman would come out and walk up and down the line and look over everybody to see how they looked first. And then he might ask them a few questions, and if you had some money to slip him, you may get an interview at that point in time.
For those who did find jobs, the melting pot did not mix evenly. Factory departments and trades were dominated by certain groups of workers. Eastern and Southern Europeans were assigned some of the hardest and dirtiest jobs, often at the lowest wages. Southern blacks joined them at the bottom of the industrial ladder, but with far less chance for advancement. Black women often had to settle for low-paid domestic work, while other women found work in laundries, offices, clothing and cigar factories, and pharmaceutical firms. Throughout industry, women were segregated into lower-paying jobs.
It's hard times, factory girls, hard times, factory girls. It's hard times, factory girls, hard times everywhere. I go to work before it's light and I work all day, but I don't get nothing but $1 in pay. It's a hard times, factory girls, hard times everywhere.
Though World War I fueled Michigan's industrial economy and labor's growth, employer and government suppression of strikes after the war halted labor's advance. Arrests and deportations of immigrants and radicals swept the nation, as did racial and ethnic hostilities. The Roaring Twenties meant high living for the wealthy, but a majority of workers faced dangerous working conditions, long hours, low pay, and an intense pace of work. Wilbur Sly recalls one particular workday in an Upper Peninsula paper mill.
Superintendent said to me, "What's the matter with you?" He said, "You can't keep up with that paper machine." I said, "There's no man alive keep up with him." Well, he said, "If you don't like it," he said, "there's 500 men out there to take your place." And there was. Many's a day I came home, I carried my lunch pail home because I didn't have time to eat.
Many working women faced sexual harassment as well. Helen Pekovsky labored at a Detroit cigar factory when she was 16.
No matter where you went to work, if the foreman wanted a date with you, you had to go, sister, or else you'd be fired the next day.
After the stock market crashed, triggering the Great Depression of the 1930s, many workers lost their homes and life savings. Unemployment soared, reaching 43% in Michigan by 1932. Soup and bread lines swelled.
I worked 20 years in the factory to buy me some bread and some meat. Now I'm looking for work and I find none. I wish I had something to eat. They gave me soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of lousy soup, soup, soup. They gave me a bowl of soup.
To resist evictions, foreclosures, and utility shutoffs, workers in several Michigan cities organized unemployed councils. Aided by communists, socialists, and other political and religious leaders, the councils demonstrated for relief programs, medical services, and federal unemployment insurance.